Hey everyone, my name is Scott and welcome to the Media Guy channel on YouTube and What I've Been Watching, where we talk about what I've been watching. We're going to do these quick fire again. I kind of like that format, so let's get started. I See You is one of these movies I keep seeing over and over on those lists of movies that you haven't seen that are really good on Amazon Prime, so on and so forth. So I finally watched it. It stars Helen Hunt as a wife of a police detective investigating the disappearance of a 12-year-old boy. And it's a movie which takes a while to set itself up. The first act of this thing is strange in that it's part police story, part home story, part scary movie. There's some jump scares along the way. It's kind of a strange mishmash of different genres. But as the second act reveals itself and shows you what's going on, it's actually pretty clever. This movie has some twists and turns that I actually really enjoyed watching play out. It's not the best movie you're ever gonna see, but it does have a creative premise once you get through that first act. I enjoyed it. I was entertained by it. Terminator Genisys does a pretty good job of pointing out the pitfalls of the Terminator series, in that each sequel has a definitive ending. So we're at the point now where it's rewritten the narrative so many times that it's really put a spotlight on this series' diminishing returns. I mean, I spent half this movie's running time trying to figure out where it fit in the narrative, and if it was just fitting poorly, or I just don't remember things clearly, or I wasn't paying attention to the movie a lot because I was just trying to place it in the universe. I mean, granted, there's not that much to pay attention to. It's running and shooting and explosions. But this narrative is so mangled at this point that this movie just doesn't ever justify its own existence. The Suicide Squad is a reboot, reimagining, sequel to the original Suicide Squad movie, which was directed by David Ayer. The fate of that film is kind of the thing of Hollywood legend at this point. After a really good trailer, that Bohemian Rhapsody trailer is great, DC kind of freaked out and had the company who cut that trailer, Trailer Park, recut this entire film without David Ayer's okay. And what they made is a bit of a mess. So this reboot, reimagining sequel was given to the capable hands of James Gunn. James Gunn has spent his entire career shining a light on the little guy, fighting for the underdogs, the not-so-known characters. And this film is no different. This is the type of material Gunn does really well, and he does it really well here. This movie is incredibly entertaining. I found myself laughing a lot throughout its running time, and connecting with the characters on a human level, which is something I didn't do with Ayer's film, or Trailer Park's film. In a lesser filmmaker's hands, a character like Polka Dot would be just a punchline and that's it, but James Gunn finds a way to make him human and empathetic throughout this film's running time. This film is a lot gorier than I expected. I think that's gonna come as a surprise to a lot of people who just know James Gunn from the Guardians of the Galaxy series. This goes back to his trauma roots. It's really gory, comedically so, but really bloody. But it has some fantastically orchestrated action scenes, especially a scene with Harley Quinn breaking out of prison, which is raid-level action, at least visually, if not physically. But man, I had a total blast with this thing, which is not something I say a lot about DC's films. They tend to be more on the gloomy side. But this, Birds of Prey, DC's looking up in my eyes. A lot of people have asked me if you need to see the original Suicide Squad to appreciate this film. And I think I've landed on, unfortunately, yes. This movie does not set up these characters at all. It leads the heavy lifting in that department to Suicide Squad. So yes, I think you kind of have to suffer through David Ayer, Trailer Park's movie to appreciate this one more, but I think this one makes it worth it. Precious, based on the novel Push by Sapphire, is one of the most memorable names for a movie, I think, in recent history. I never got around to seeing this film. I'm super far behind on my Academy pictures. This movie is not an easy watch. A lot of people have called it misery porn, and I can see where they get that. It is gritty and raw and hard to stomach sometimes. But man, the reason to watch this movie is the supporting performance from Monique. Academy Award winning, doesn't even start to cover it. She is raw and tragic and downright transformative in this role. She's a villain that thinks she has a heart of gold, but ultimately is just a villain, and she's outstanding in this performance. The movie has pretty good performances across the board, not to mention Paula Patton, and a great supporting performance from Mariah Carey, of all people. A really emotional performance in just a few scenes. Mariah's character, a social worker, is a bit of a grounding element between all these characters. She is the audience cipher, and she pulls it off really well. Yeah, I get it. It's not an easy movie to watch. It's hard to stomach at times, but man, that Monique performance is well worth your attention. Val is a documentary film about the life and times of actor Val Kilmer. He is a producer on the film. This is an authorized biography of Val, using his home movies in kind of the same way as that Shannon Hoon documentary we saw last time, but to a lesser extent. This is very much a movie about Val now. Although I'm not sure that's the movie they set out to make. It seems as though they meant to make a retrospective movie, a movie about Val's career through the years. But what ended up coming out is a movie about contrasts, comparing the charismatic and funny but driven actor that came out of college to the man he is now, a man whose health has been decimated by throat cancer. For those of you who might not know, the throat cancer stole a lot of Val Kilmer's ability to speak. He now speaks out of a hole in his throat, which I've talked to a couple of friends who said they found that a little hard to watch, and it is. But I think that also informs the story they're trying to tell. Val Kilmer actually talks a lot more in this film than I expected, but a lot of the more deeper thoughts that Val had are performed by his son in voiceover. But what surprised me about this authorized biography is its contradictions. You will see Val say, "I feel a lot better than I look at this point in my life." But then the film will follow Val to places where that clearly isn't true. Val will say, "I feel somewhat sorry for actors who have to do comic conventions or go to conventions around their movies to make money while also doing that himself." An act that clearly takes a toll on Val, even if he isn't willing to admit it. So the resulting film is a lot more tragic than I think the filmmakers anticipated. I think I, as a film watcher, anticipated it quite a bit. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just seems like this wasn't the film they set out to make, but the film is better because they were able to show the complexities of where Val started compared to where Val is now. It's not a movie that hits every movie in his filmography. It plays pretty hard into the big ones like Top Gun and Tombstone. He mentions a few more movies along the way, but those are the two big ones they talk about. So it's not a comprehensive look back at his life, but if you are a Val Kilmer fan, it's almost essential watching. At times hard to watch, at times incredibly depressing, but essential. The Gentleman is a return to form of sorts for Guy Ritchie, who started his career with these gritty crime dramas and kind of wavered away from them with the Sherlock Holmes series of films. But he's kind of come back with this film, a very well-written, a very well-acted, gritty crime movie. The acting is great pretty much across the board for this film, but the standout for me was Hugh Grant, who is barely recognizable under tons of makeup and sunglasses. This is not a character like I've seen him play before. Gone is the bumbling, kind of shy, timid British guy that we know him for playing. This is a much more edgy and gritty performance. But Guy Ritchie's script is the star here. He co-wrote it with a couple other people, but it is clever and takes a lot of twists and turns along the way and is written in a way that is Tarantino-esque. I know those two directors have always been compared to each other, but it plays here. The writing is always intriguing and kept me involved in the story throughout its running time. Sometimes movies don't want to change the world, they just want to be entertaining, and this movie is just super entertaining. Freak stars Emil Hirsch as a father who has self-sequestered himself and his young daughter during what seems to be a post-apocalyptic future. And the first half of the film is you learning why these two characters have sequestered themselves, and why there's a creepy old ice cream man played by Bruce Dern outside their house. As the film reveals itself, I thought, okay, this is interesting, but then it gets super silly in the third act, and I just got tired of it. For me, this movie wore out its welcome relatively early in the festivities. It's not a very long film, and I shouldn't be done with it as early as I was. And I think that's partly because I just didn't appreciate or like where the movie ended up. It didn't go into a world that I thought was interesting after it revealed itself. There are movies that work this concept to greater effect. I'm looking at you, 10 Cloverfield Lane. That movie is great. This one is not. Judy is a biopic about Judy Garland, starring an Oscar-winning performance from Renee Zellweger, and she is very good in this role, transformative at times, really captures Judy Garland very well. My problem with the film is that it's kind of a shapeless blob of a movie. The movie that surrounds this performance is meandering and focusless, doesn't seem to go anywhere or have a point to make about Judy Garland's later stages. This is very much a film about the later stages of Judy Garland's life, when she had a residency in London and was trying to recapture some of that old magic, which we learned actually wasn't old magic. She was miserable for most of her life. But the film seemed directionless. Like, the performance is great, but the movie as a whole just did nothing for me. It took me about 10 minutes into Motherless Brooklyn before I realized, oh, this is film noir. Film noir is not a genre that gets hit up by Hollywood very much these days, so it's refreshing to see, and refreshing to see done really well as it's done here. Good performances across the board, a great performance from Bruce Willis. It's always good when Bruce Willis gives a damn. The focus of this movie is Ed Norton's character. And Ed Norton's performance is very good, if a little weird. What I mean by that is how he is written. His character has Tourette syndrome, but it's almost universally written to be comedic relief. It doesn't seem like it ever comes up when he's hardcore investigating the mystery of this movie. It seems to hide itself when it needs to hide itself and come out when it isn't used for any purpose. There are points in this movie where it would have been awkward for him to have a flare-up, and it just never happens. And that makes me wonder why it's even part of his character in the first place. It makes his character different on the page, but didn't need to be. But the movie always looks great. The film noir, when it's done really well, smolders. It's just a smoldering type of movie, and this movie smolders. It's another solid film. Not one that I'm gonna rave about, but I was entertained. 21 Bridges is a dark crime drama, which is notable for being the last theatrically released film starring Chadwick Boseman. Boseman would have 2 more movies released after this one, both straight to Netflix. This is the last theatrically released one. When I think about 21 Bridges, I weirdly think about Denzel Washington. In that, this is a script that Denzel would take, in that it is good. It's not great, it's good. It's a good script. But the movie would be made better for having Denzel in it. This movie is made better for having Chadwick Boseman in it. I honestly think these crime dramas are kind of a dime a dozen. So having a big name, talented actor in it probably got this movie made. Also helps it was produced by the Russo brothers. This movie's entertaining. I mean, it's very well done. As a thriller, it really works. It has a nice ticking clock element that always keeps the pace of the film up. The performance by Boseman is great. It certainly makes the movie better. as does the supporting performance from J.K. Simmons and Sienna Miller. And the two main antagonists, played by Taylor Kitsch and Stephen James, are really good. Especially James, who has just a show-stopping scene with Bozeman later on in the film. But a solidly built little thriller which is entertaining throughout its entire running time. I was always engaged, I was always entertained. What can you say? Not the best movie I've ever seen, but I enjoyed my time with it. Terminator Dark Fate is another Terminator movie. This time we see James Cameron coming back into the fold, this time as a producer, and this movie is directed by Tim Miller. Finch, silly cat. It's directed by Tim Miller, who directed Deadpool. How dare you have a bell on your collar? This film takes the standpoint of, yes, we're getting diminishing returns from these sequels, so let's just retcon everything and start over. We'll just make this a direct sequel to Terminator 2. But it does it in the same way as Genisys, in that Cyberdyne Systems and Skynet are now just called something else. And there's Terminators sitting back in the past and so on and so forth. It's the same nonsense, it's just done in a different timeline. And in that way, I don't think this movie justifies its own existence. It doesn't seem necessary. Much like all of the sequels, while it's fun to see Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger back on screen together, I don't think that chemistry is enough to bring me through the entire running time of this film. It has some cool set pieces, has some cool visual imagery, has some interesting concepts. But I just don't think I care anymore. You really have to go out of your way to make your film feel essential, and this just doesn't. I think I'm done with this series, guys. I'm over it. I guess that was that movie's Dark Fate. Eh? Finch is unimpressed by my puns. And then I watched North by Northwest, a movie I've never seen, which is kind of criminal, I think. Yeah, another Alfred Hitchcock masterpiece. This movie is rated as highly as it is for a reason. It's also a lot funnier than most of Hitch's films. I found myself laughing quite a bit at the dialogue that Cary Grant was delivering throughout this film's running time. A lot of laughs to be had here, but it gets serious and is very suspenseful when it needs to be. And the screenplay knows how to change the pieces on the chessboard that it has in a way that makes each scene suspenseful in a different way. Either we as an audience have knowledge that the characters don't have, or the characters have knowledge that we don't have, or everyone has the knowledge and one character off the side doesn't have it. It always plays around with the dynamic between audience and characters among characters. And that's really interesting and keeps the film engaging throughout its running time. It's a relatively long film, but it's very breezy. One of Hitch's best. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, you guys. If you've been watching anything cool, I'll see you down in comments. I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.